Okay, so looking to make some smart investments over the next 3 years, well, you've come to the right place. We're diving deep, deep, deep into this report that's mapping out some like huge market shifts, and we're going to spotlight the companies that are like poised to ride these waves of change.
What I think is really cool about this report is it doesn't just throw a bunch of company names at you. It really gives us a roadmap for understanding these forces that are shaping these markets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're talking about quantum computing, robotics, biotech, all those digital assets that everybody's buzzing about, ain't all how consumer trends are influencing it all.
It's like a sneak peek into the future of, well, everything.
Totally cool.
The report, it doesn't sugarcoat things. It acknowledges that 2025 could be a little bit of a bumpy ride. NASDAQ.com analysis points to a possible stock market correction.
Oh, like how bad are we talking?
Maybe a 20% dip or even more. And then you have some analysts saying the crypto craze, might be losing some steam.
So buckle up, everybody. It sounds like it could be a wild ride. What does all this mean for, everyday investors like myself? Should we be heading for the hills?
Not necessarily. The Shiller price to earnings ratio, it basically tells us if the market is overvalued or undervalued. It's pretty high right now, and that's partly why experts are predicting this correction.
Okay, so instead of panicking, what's the smart play here? What should we be doing?
Think quality over hype. So instead of chasing those trendy stocks that everyone is talking about, focus on companies with solid foundations, good financials, steady performance, the ability to handle those rising interest rates. They're more likely to weather the storm, if things get rocky.
So less gambling, more like building a bunker.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense. What about crypto? Should we be hitting the brakes on that?
Well, the report does mention some skepticism about how sustainable this rapid crypto growth is, especially since a lot of it is fueled by leveraged investments, where people are basically borrowing money to make bigger bets. So if the market takes a dive, those folks are in for a pretty rough ride.
Yeah. Yikes. That sounds a little risky. So tread carefully is what you were saying.
Absolutely. Do your homework, understand what you're investing in, and never, ever put in more than you can afford to lose.
Solid advice. Okay, so things might be a little shaky in the short term, but this report also talks about some massive long-term investment themes, and they sound pretty exciting. Morgan Stanley, for example, has pinpointed 4 big ones: artificial intelligence, longevity, the future of energy, and the rewiring of the global economy.
And what I think is interesting is that even though AI is getting all of this hype right now, the report suggests that the real winners are going to be the companies that are actually using AI to solve real-world problems and make their products or services better, not just talking about it.
So it's about practical application, not just buzzwords.
Got it.
Okay, let's break down some of these emerging sectors that the report spotlights. First up, quantum computing, which honestly still sounds like science fiction to me.
It does, doesn't it? We are talking about computers that can crunch through problems that would take our current supercomputers, like the ones that take up entire buildings, millions of years to solve. It is mind-blowing stuff.
The report mentions that some big names are already pouring money into this, like IBM, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, the who's who of the tech world.
They're all developing different types of quantum computers and software. IBM, for example, just unveiled their IBM Quantum System 2. It's modular, meaning you can upgrade it and fix it easily, which is really important because this technology is changing so fast.
Google, they made a splash a while back, claiming they achieved quantum supremacy, meaning their quantum computer solved a problem way faster than any regular computer ever could.
Exactly. And they're still pushing the boundaries with their quantum AI division. One of their big focuses is on making these quantum bits, or qubits, the basic building blocks of a quantum computer, more stable and less prone to errors, which is a huge challenge right now.
And it's not just the tech giants, right? There are also all these smaller, what they call pure play quantum companies, like IonQ, D-Wave, Rigetti Computing, all racing to get their tech out there.
And each one of them is kind of betting on a slightly different approach. IonQ, for instance, uses trapped ions for their qubits, while D-Wave focuses on something called quantum annealing, which is really good for optimization problems like, finding the absolute best solution out of a zillion possibilities.
Okay, starting to get it. But the report throws in a dose of reality too, right? Widespread use of quantum computers is still a long way off. Experts say we won't see a real impact until 2035, 2040, maybe even later.
Yeah, it's a long game, which means it's risky, especially since the value of these companies is based on future expectations. So any delays could send those valuations tumbling.
So for anyone thinking of jumping into that quantum computing investment pool, patience is key. Fascinating stuff, but definitely still early days.
It is, but, even though widespread use is a ways off, the report digs into how the big tech companies are approaching their quantum investments right now. For example, IBM is betting on a hybrid model.
Hybrid, what does that mean?
They believe that quantum computers will work best alongside our current computers, kind of like specialized helpers for those really, really tough tasks.
So each type of computer kind of has its strengths, so combining them could be the way to go.
Exactly. Now, Microsoft, they're doing something totally different. They're building a quantum chip based on these particles called Majorana particles, which could theoretically lead to systems with millions of qubits.
Wow, millions. That's way beyond what we have now. If they can pull that off, that's a total game changer.
Oh, it would be. And then Google, they're sticking with their superconducting qubit technology. They just revealed their new 105 qubit processor called Willow. And what is really fascinating is they are looking into how to use quantum computing to boost their AI systems. Imagine the possibilities if they could combine those two powerful technologies.
Now, that's something I'd like to see. What about Amazon? They're always up to something interesting.
They're going the platform route, with their service called Amazon Bracket. It basically gives people access to different kinds of quantum computers from various companies so they can experiment and build applications without having to build their own quantum computers, which is pretty neat.
So they're like the one-stop shop for quantum computing, no matter which technology ends up winning out? Clever.
Very clever.
All right, so quantum computing, huge potential, long timeline, high risk, but maybe huge rewards way down the line. What's next on our investment exploration?
Next, we'll delve into the world of robotics and automation, where AI is causing some truly remarkable advancements. Imagine robots that can not only perform tasks, but can also, learn and adapt.
So not just your basic factory robots anymore.
Not even close. We're talking about robots with more complex capabilities like vision and even prediction. All thanks to AI.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
The report highlights one company, Grabbit, and they're doing some really innovative work with what they call electroadhesion technology.
Electroadhesion. Okay, that sounds intense. Break that down for me. What does that even mean?
Well, you know how static cling works? It's kind of similar to electroadhesion. So Grabbit is using this technology to create these robotic grippers that can pick up and handle objects with amazing dexterity, almost like a human hand, Imagine a robot that can pick a strawberry without squishing it, or assemble those tiny little electronic components without damaging them.
Wow, so it's like doing that delicate work that robots just couldn't do before. So it sounds like it could really change how things are made in industries like, I don't know, clothing manufacturing or electronics.
Absolutely. And this is just one example of how AI is really pushing the boundaries of what robots can do. But as robots become, more capable, it also kind of raises those questions about the future of jobs, right?
Right. That's always the concern about robots taking over. Does the report address that at all?
It does. And it actually suggests that instead of feeling those job losses, we should think about how to, adapt and work with these AI-powered robots. It predicts new opportunities will open up, in areas like robot supervision, project management, and quality assurance.
So it's not about being replaced. It's about, learning those new skills to manage and work alongside these robots.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Does the report mention any specific companies that are leading the way in this robotic revolution?
It does. The global market for industrial automation is expected to be huge. By 2032, we're talking almost $450 billion. So companies like StandardBots, Siemens, and Smart Robotics are, well positioned to capitalize on this growth.
Okay, those names ring a bell, but can you give me the rundown on what makes each company kind of stand out?
Sure. Let's start with StandardBots. They're focusing on making those industrial robots more affordable and easier to use, especially for smaller businesses. Their robots have, AI-powered no-code setup, so that means you don't need to be a programming whiz to get them up and running.
Oh, so they're kind of democratizing access to robots?
Exactly.
That's a big deal for companies that, might not have the budget for a whole team of robotics engineers.
Right, exactly. And then there's Siemens. They're, a giant in industrial automation. They're known for their comprehensive solutions, from software to hardware to services. They really are a one-stop shop for companies looking to automate their operations. They specialize in modular modular robots, which are super flexible and can be easily adapted to perform different tasks. Plus, they offer this robot rental program, so companies can, like, try before they buy or just rent robots for specific projects.
Oh, that's a great option for companies that, need that flexibility or want to test the waters before, like making a big investment.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got quantum computing, robotics on our radar. What's next on this investment journey?
Let's dive into the world of biology technologies, where advancements are happening at a, like, dizzying pace.
Yeah.
We're talking about personalized medicine tailored to your unique genetic makeup, gene editing that could potentially cure inherited diseases, biomanufacturing that uses living cells to create life-saving drugs.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It is.
I remember reading about gene editing a while back. It seemed so futuristic at the time. Is that actually like becoming a reality now?
It really is. Companies like CRISPR Therapeutics, Intellia Therapeutics, and Editas Medicine are leading the charge in developing those CRISPR-based therapies.
Okay, CRISPR. Refresh my memory on that one. It's a little bit of a mouthful.
Think of CRISPR like a tiny pair of molecular scissors that can precisely cut and edit DNA. It's like revolutionizing how we approach treating genetic diseases. So imagine a future where diseases like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, which are caused by faulty genes, could actually be cured. That's the promise of CRISPR.
That sounds like a total game changer for like healthcare in general. But I also remember, some controversy around gene editing, like the ethical concerns, right?
You're right. It's not without its challenges. There are huge ethical implications, especially when it comes to making changes to DNA that can be passed down to future generations. Something called germline editing.
Right. That raises all sorts of questions about, like playing with the very building blocks of life.
Right.
It seems like something we need to be very, very careful with.
We do.
So CRISPR is definitely a, powerful tool with huge potential, but also like some serious ethical considerations. What else is happening in this like biotech space?
Well, aside from gene editing, personalized medicine is also, like, gaining a lot of traction. It's about tailoring treatments to each person's unique, genetic makeup, lifestyle, and environment. So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, it's about getting the right treatment for the right person at the right time.
So medicine that's like customized to you.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty amazing. What kind of companies are like making that happen?
Companies like Illumina and Thermo Fisher Scientific are major players in the field of genomic sequencing. So they're developing the tools and technologies that allow us to, like, read and understand a person's unique genetic code. And then you have companies like Roche and Novartis who are using this information to develop those targeted gene therapies and cancer treatments.
So one company figures out your like genetic blueprint, and another is using that information to create a treatment that's specifically designed for you.
Exactly.
That's pretty incredible. The report mentions another aspect of biotech, biomanufacturing. What's that all about?
Biomanufacturing is about using living cells, or, their components, to create products. So think vaccines, antibodies, even engineered tissues. Instead of relying on those traditional chemical processes, we're kind of harnessing the power of biology to create these complex and potentially more effective treatments.
That's almost like we're growing medicine instead of making it in a lab.
In a way, yes. And this is especially important as we, develop those more sophisticated therapies, like cell and gene therapies, which rely on those living cells as the active ingredient.
So who are the like key players in this biomanufacturing space?
Companies like Merck KGaA, Danaher Corp, Sartorius AG, and Thermo Fisher Scientific, they're all involved in providing the technologies and services needed to, produce biologics. Those medicines made from living cells at scale.
Okay, so we've got like a lot going on in biotech, gene editing, personalized medicine, biomanufacturing. It's a lot to keep track of, but it sounds like there's like huge potential for growth and innovation in this sector.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember that it's still a relatively young industry. There are risks, especially around regulation.
Right, because new technologies always come with new challenges, especially when you're talking about things like, manipulating genes or creating those new life forms.
Right.
Does the report offer any like insights on how to navigate those risks as an investor?
It does. The report really emphasizes the importance of paying close attention to those regulatory hurdles these companies face, especially those working on gene editing. The safety and ethical considerations are complex, and regulators are still working to, like, establish those clear guidelines.
So while the potential rewards in biotech are, high, investors need to be aware of those risks and kind of keep an eye on that, evolving regulatory landscape.
Exactly. But even with those challenges, the biotech market is projected to grow significantly in the coming years, so it's definitely an exciting area to watch.
Speaking of exciting areas, what about how consumer behavior is shaping things? It seems like people's priorities are shifting pretty rapidly these days.
You're right, and those changing preferences are having a huge impact on, the business landscape. So companies that can adapt to these new trends are the ones that are going to thrive.
What kind of trends are we talking about here? What should investors be paying attention to?
Well, two big ones the report highlights are sustainability and digital experiences. Consumers are becoming much more conscious of the environmental and social impact of their purchases, and they're supporting businesses that align with their values.
So it's not just about the product anymore. It's about the whole company, what it stands for.
Exactly. And at the same time, they expect these seamless and personalized digital experiences, whether they're, shopping online, interacting with customer service, or engaging with a brand on social media. So companies that can deliver on both fronts, sustainability and digital savvy, are the ones that are going to win big.
Are there any companies doing that really well that we can look at as examples?
Absolutely. Patagonia, the outdoor clothing and gear company, is a great example of a brand that's built a loyal following by championing, sustainability.
I love their stuff. They're always talking about, using recycled materials and encouraging people to repair their clothes instead of just buying new ones.
Exactly. They use recycled materials, encourage product repair and reuse, and advocate for, environmental protection. So their commitment to sustainability has really resonated with consumers, and it's become a key part of their brand identity.
It proves that, doing good can also be good for business.
It can.
What about other companies? Are there any others that stand out in terms of sustainability?
Lush, the cosmetics company, is another one. They've gone all in on reducing waste. So they've eliminated packaging for many of their products. They even have naked stores where everything is sold without packaging.
Wow, that's a bold move, but it seems to be working for them. What about on the digital experience side? I'm guessing the giants like Amazon and Walmart are still the ones to beat.
They are, and they're constantly innovating to stay ahead. Faster delivery, wider selection, smoother checkout. They're always raising the bar.
And they're using, AI to personalize those experiences too, right?
Yeah.
Recommending products you might like or making the whole shopping process more efficient.
Exactly. But it's not just the big players anymore. Platforms like Shopify and Wix have empowered millions of smaller businesses to build their own, online stores and reach a global audience.
So it's kind of leveled the playing field for e-commerce in a way.
It has. And these platforms are constantly adding new features and tools to help businesses succeed online. Things like, marketing automation, analytics, and customer relationship management.
It's amazing how much technology is changing the way we, shop and interact with brands. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from quantum computing to biotech to sustainable shopping. But there's one area we can't ignore: digital assets.
Ah, yes, the elephant in the room. The world of digital assets is definitely one of the most dynamic and rapidly evolving areas in the investment landscape, but it's also one of the most complex and frankly a bit intimidating for, many investors.
I have to admit, I'm still a little fuzzy on what exactly falls under that digital assets umbrella. It seems like more than just Bitcoin these days.
You're right. It's much broader than that. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum are certainly, a big part of it. But there's also the whole world of tokenized assets, decentralized finance or DeFi, and even the metaverse.
Okay, so break it down for me. Let's start with cryptocurrencies. What are the key opportunities and risks there for, investors right now?
Well, cryptocurrencies can offer a potential hedge against, inflation and economic uncertainty. And they can potentially offer high returns, as we've seen in recent years. But as we've also seen, they can be, incredibly volatile. Prices can swing wildly, and there's always the risk of a major market crash.
Right. It definitely seems like, not for the faint of heart. So what about those tokenized assets you mentioned? What's the deal with those?
Tokenization is essentially about taking a real world asset like real estate or art or even intellectual property and representing it as a digital token on a blockchain.
Blockchain. Remind me what that is again.
You can think of a blockchain as a digital ledger that records transactions in a secure and transparent way. It's what makes, cryptocurrencies possible, and it's also being used to create these tokenized assets.
Okay, so you're basically creating like a digital version of a physical asset. What's the advantage of that?
Well, it can improve liquidity, which means it's, easier to buy or sell the asset. For example, real estate is typically illiquid. It can take a long time to sell a property. But if you tokenize it, you can divide it into smaller, more liquid tokens that can be, traded more easily.
So instead of having to buy an entire building, you could buy like a fraction of it through tokens.
Exactly.
That makes investing in things like real estate, much more accessible.
Exactly. And it opens up new possibilities for, fractional ownership, which could attract a wider range of investors. But there are also risks to consider, like regulatory uncertainty is still a big one. It's not always clear, how securities laws apply to tokenized assets. And then there's also the potential for fraud, as with any new technology.
So do your homework before jumping in, as always. What about decentralized finance? DeFi. That seems to be like the latest buzzword in the, crypto world.
DeFi is essentially a parallel financial system that's built on blockchain technology. It aims to, cut out the middlemen, those traditional finance middlemen like banks, by offering services like lending, borrowing, and trading directly on the blockchain.
So it's like a peer-to-peer financial system.
Exactly. And it can offer some, attractive benefits like higher interest rates on lending, the ability to access financial services without needing a bank account. But it's also important to, be aware of the risks.
Like what?
Well, smart contracts, which are those self-executing contracts that power DeFi, they can be vulnerable to, hacks and exploits. Again, that regulatory landscape is still evolving.
So exciting possibilities, but, also potentially risky. What about the metaverse? That still seems like it's, more hype than reality right now.
The metaverse is this network of virtual worlds where people can interact, play games, socialize, and even conduct business. It's still very early days, but some investors believe it has the potential to be a massive market.
But it also seems incredibly speculative right now.
It is. There are opportunities in areas like, virtual real estate, NFTs, digital goods, and virtual advertising. But, prices for virtual assets can fluctuate wildly, and there's no guarantee that any particular metaverse platform will succeed in the long run.
Okay, so approach with caution, but it's definitely an area to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
So you've got cryptocurrencies, tokenized assets, DeFi, and the metaverse that is a lot to unpack. Where should someone even begin if they're looking to explore investing in digital assets?
The most important thing is to start with, education. Learn about the technology, the different types of digital assets, and, the risks involved. Don't invest in something you don't understand.
Great advice. Don't just jump in because everyone else is doing it.
Exactly.
Do your own research. Make sure you are comfortable with the risks before investing in anything, digital or otherwise.
You got it. And speaking of risks, this report also reminds us that, the next few years could be a bit volatile for, all markets, not just digital assets. So buckle up. It's going to be an interesting ride.
It does sound like it. But with, careful research and long-term perspective, there are some incredible opportunities out there.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that you were particularly interested in actionable insights to help, build your portfolio. So let's get practical and talk about, specific companies and strategies based on what we've discussed today.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks. I'm ready to start putting together my investment game plan.
Great. So thinking back to those long-term themes we discussed, AI, longevity, future of energy, and the rewiring of the global economy. Let's consider some, companies that stand out within those categories.
Okay, sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, in the AI space, NVIDIA is a clear leader. They're the powerhouse behind those chips that make AI possible, and they're only getting stronger. Their chips are used in everything from self-driving cars to data centers, and they're essential for training and running those complex AI models.
Right, I've heard their name thrown around a lot lately. They seem to be everywhere. What about some other companies that are leveraging AI in interesting ways?
Absolutely. Look at a company like UiPath. They specialize in robotic process automation, which is basically using software robots to, automate those repetitive tasks in businesses. It's like having a digital workforce that can take care of all the, boring, time-consuming stuff, freeing up humans to focus on more, strategic work.
That sounds like a productivity dream for a lot of companies. What about the longevity theme? I'm kind of intrigued by that one.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to live longer and healthier lives, right?
It is a fascinating area. One company that's making waves is Teladoc Health. They're a leader in telehealth, providing virtual healthcare services. This is becoming increasingly important, as the population ages and people need more convenient ways to access healthcare.
Especially with people, living longer,
Yeah.
it makes sense that access to healthcare would be a growing need. What about the future of energy? I feel like that's such a hot topic right now, with climate change and that push for renewable energy sources.
It is. And one company that's, well positioned in this space is Nexera Energy. They're the world's largest generator of wind and solar energy, and they're, continuing to invest heavily in renewable energy infrastructure.
So they're kind of like a pure play on that transition to clean energy.
Exactly.
If the world is moving towards renewables, they're likely to benefit. Okay, that makes sense. Now, the rewiring of the global economy theme is a bit broader, but one company that stands out to me is Shopify.
Yeah, they're really interesting.
Shopify, the platform for setting up online stores?
That's right. They're empowering those small businesses to participate in the, global economy by making it so easy to sell products online to customers anywhere in the world. As more and more commerce moves online, Shopify is, well positioned for continued growth.
Okay, so we've got some, solid picks in the AI, longevity, and future of energy sectors. What about some actionable advice for those interested in exploring digital assets, knowing that it's, a high risk, high reward area?
If you're, comfortable with the risks and want to dip your toes into that crypto world, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two, biggest players and a good place to start. But remember, only invest what you can afford to lose and be prepared for volatility.
Solid advice. What about tokenized assets? Any companies to watch there?
Realty's an interesting company. They're tokenizing real estate, making it possible to, invest in fractional ownership of rental properties using cryptocurrency. It's a relatively new concept, but it has the potential to democratize real estate investing.
And for those intrigued by, DeFi, any suggestions there?
Aave is one of the leading lending and borrowing protocols in that DeFi space. They allow users to, earn interest on their cryptocurrency holdings or borrow cryptocurrency against their collateral. It's a complex space, but Aave is a relatively established player and could be a good, starting point for exploring DeFi.
And lastly, any thoughts on navigating the metaverse?
Investing in the metaverse is, highly speculative, but if you're interested, you could consider looking into companies like Meta Platforms, formerly Facebook, which is, heavily invested in building out its metaverse platform, or Unity Software, which provides the tools and technology for creating a lot of those, metaverse experiences.
This is a lot of great information. It feels much more manageable now that we've, talked about those specific companies and strategies.
It's all about connecting those, big themes to specific investment opportunities. And remember, this is just a starting point. Do your own research, consult with a financial advisor, and, make informed decisions that align with your individual risk tolerance and investment goals.
Great advice. It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of, emerging technologies and trends, but it's crucial to do your due diligence and not let emotions drive your investment decisions.
Absolutely. And never be afraid to, ask questions or seek advice if you're unsure about something. The world of investing can be, complex, but with the right knowledge and approach, you can, navigate it successfully.
Thank you so much for, sharing your insights today. This has been an incredibly informative deep dive into the investment landscape and the, key trends shaping the future.
You're very welcome. I always enjoy, exploring these topics and helping people understand the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it, valuable and empowering. Remember, the future is full of, possibilities. And by staying informed and making those smart investment decisions, you can position yourself to thrive in the years to come.
Until next time, happy investing.